medical sciences and technology. And he was the visionary thought to combine sciences with engineering, with medicine, with technology was something that he thought of 40 years ago. Mahatma Gandhi once said, "Live as if you were to die tomorrow. Learn as if you were to live forever." And there is nobody else except Professor Velayathan who followed this. 40 years ago, Sri Chitra Tirunal Institute was established to combine medical device development with clinical sciences and clinical medicine, and now public health also. And it is now an institute of national importance, which several other institutions in the country are trying to emulate. These are some very historical photographs. This is the opening of the Setu Parvati Bai Surgical Center. This was done by Prime Minister Indira Gandhi. The foundation stone for the biomedical technology wing was done by by Sri Morarji Desai along with Sri A.K. Anthony, the Chief Minister of Kerala, and Dr. M.G. Ramachandran. Then we have several eminent dignitaries, the presidents, and of course the finance minister and the future prime minister laying the foundation stone for the Achyuta Menon Center. The important thing was, how did it become an institute of national importance? So Professor Velayathan himself told me this story, that this was a very small place. All the other institutes of national, all the other places which were supposed to be totally independent of government control, had some designation attached to it. And they were actually raking their brains when suddenly Sri Morarji Desai's personal secretary phoned up Professor Velayathan and said, "Well, I have a brilliant idea. We'll make it into an institute of national importance and a statutory body by the Act of Parliament." And in 1980, by the Act of Parliament, this became a statutory body and became an autonomous institute. That's when the whole thing started. And after that, he became a national research professor at the Manipal Academy of Medical Sciences. There's a Tanzanian proverb, little by little, a little becomes a lot. Take care of small details and the big picture is taken care of by itself. So he was very, very acutely aware of the fact that all the medical devices made in the country are imported from outside, and we have eminent people from TTK here, and the Chitra heart valve was started on the basis of the need to replace the natural heart valve in patients with rheumatic heart disease and congenital heart disease, which was fairly common in India. The artificial heart valve has now been implanted in 200,000 patients. Only yesterday, there was a very eminent president of one of the ICERs whom I met in Hyderabad, IIT, and he said that his brother was implanted with this Chitra heart valve, and after 40 years, it's absolutely fine, and his brother is absolutely fine. So he was telling the entire group who's present there. And the blood bags, almost 5 million blood bags are sold every month in Asia, and they're all by the technology which Professor Velayathan propounded. He was always interested in lifelong earnings. Jiddu Krishnamurti has said, there is no end to education. It's not what you read, a book or to pass an examination or to finish with education. The whole of life from the moment you're born to the moment of die is a process of learning. And then, after he superannuated from here, he suddenly became interested in Ayurveda, because he felt that there is no other place in the country except Kerala from where Ayurveda has to be propagated. And as you can see, he has written several books. He was given a senior fellowship by the Homi Bhabha Council to pursue a study of Charaka, which culminated in the publication of the book, The Legacy of Charaka. Then he also published books on Shushruth and Vagabhat, and completed the series of legacy volumes on grade 3 of Ayurveda. He wrote another book, Ayurveda Inheritance, a reader's companion, published by the Manipal University Press in 2017. He's a prolific writer and really worked hard. Of course, with all the responsibilities also come accolades. So Will Durant has said, never mind your happiness, complete your responsibilities. He is probably the very few people in India who have fellowships on the Indian Academy of Science, Indian National Science Academy, National Academy of Sciences, in the Kerala. We have National Academy of Medical Sciences, Indian National Academy of Engineers, the World Academy of Sciences, American College of Cardiology, Royal College of Physicians of London, International Union of Societies of Biomaterials and Engineering, and he's been the president of Indian National Science Academy. I mean, if you look at the diverse fellow that he was, I think these academic agencies got more prestige by actually appointing him than what he got from them. He was the Hunterian Professor of the Royal College of Surgeons of England and the senior member of the Royal College of Thoracic Surgeons of the United States and Great Britain. He has won, of course, several awards: R.D. Bilra Award, O.P. Bhasin Award, Jawaharlal Nehru Award, Dhanvantri Award, Aryabhatt Medal, Basanti Devi Amirchand Prize of the Academy of Medical Sciences. He was an honorary fellow of the Kerala Academy of Sciences and a national research professor. He has served on several government academic committees that I will not mention here, which actually decided the policies of science at that time. And he was the chairman on bioethics of the Indian Council for Medical Research and the chairman of the State Committee for Science, Technology and Environment of the Government of Kerala, and the function which is being organized today. He was a past president of the Association of Indian Universities. And for his contribution to science and technology, he was awarded the Padma Bhushan and the Padma Vibhushan by the grateful government of India. Appreciation is a wonderful thing. What it does is, it makes what is excellent in others belong to us as well. And the French government honored him by making him a Chevalier in the Order of Palm Academics, which is the highest award given by the French government in academics. The Dr. Simon Asper Award from the Johns Hopkins University was also given to him. And the interesting thing is that the new hybrid orchid, which has been named after Professor Velayathan. A new research and development facility has been named the MS Velayathan Medical Device Engineering Block. This was inaugurated by the Union Minister, Dr. Harshvardhan, at the Sri Chitra Institute, Trivandrum. And of course, none of this is possible without the support of the family and the spouse. And of course, we are also grateful to Professor Ashima Velayathan for all the support which he has rendered, because of which he could do so much. I have a very close association with Professor Velayathan. He was the chairman of our governing council at SGPGI Lucknow. He was also the orator for our National Foundation Day, and I have met him before. I was also a resident of Sri Chitra. I joined this place, and then because of some personal circumstances, I was forced to move away, but he was there to take my interview here. And ever since he came to know that I became the director of Sri Chitra Tirunal Institute, every 2 months he will call me, he will discuss the institute, tell me thoughts about himself. And the last conversation which I had with him was approximately 10 days before he passed away, and about 4 or 5 days before he slipped into coma. And he knew at that time that he has developed liver metastasis, and he has metastasis all over. And he had decided that he doesn't want any further treatment. So acceptance looks like a passive state, but in reality, it brings something entirely new to this world, that peace, a subtle energy vibration, is consciousness. This was said by Dr. Eckhart Tolle. And during this last conversation, which lasted for nearly 45 minutes, he said that he had accepted the great prognosis, and he was grateful that it was not painful, and he was grateful that he could still continue to pursue his academic career. With NIMHANS, he was actually making some Ayurvedic preparation for cognitive disturbances, and the work is still going on. And the most important thing is that he said that he's very fond of Sri Chitra Tirunal Institute and the Kerala Academy of Science and Technology, and was very proud of the wonderful work Science and Technology and the Institute was doing. He is grateful, he said he was grateful to God that he's not in pain and with his family. And another statement that he made is still ringing in my ears. He said, "It's only a lucky man who sees his work bear fruit in his own lifetime." So before I end, I'd like to just share with you a speech which he gave at the convocation. It's edited, but it's only the relevant parts I'd like to just share with you.
Very honored to those the campus on which the Sri Chitra Institute back in 1951, I joined here as a first year medical student in the first medical college in the state. After my MBBS degree, I left soon after, and by the sweetest of chances, I found myself back here on the same campus in 1974. At that time, it was called Sri Chitra Medical Center. I became part of that. I was still around for 20 years, and this turned out to be my cover point. Now here I would like to mention an observation made by Mr. Ramchandran, who was some of you may know him, was the former Chief Secretary of Kerala. He was a senior official, I think he was the Additional Secretary of the Prime Minister's Secretariat. During this time, Morali Desai's time. A very good scholar, a keen observer. He once taught to me several scientific institutions, which he was observing at very close hand in the Hume's office. He said there is something about our Indian scientific institutions, not hospitals. He said there is a poor phase in the growth pattern of these institutions. The first 15 years were years of great optimism, brisk growth, support, enthusiasm. All this happens for about 15 years. And then the institute has been very large. The original leadership is all gone, dead. And groups have been formed. They are very large numbers. And the group interests often come into clash. And as a result of this, the growth slows down, and there is a case of a plateau. And this continues for another 15 years. And by the end of this, the original objectives are largely forgotten. We have a large number of people, different groups, fighting for their own interests, always asking for government support for this or that. Government interventions should have more and more frequent. Sometimes inquiries are conducted. So by the end of this, that is the phase of decline. That may last any amount of time, but usually around 20-25 years. And then the last phase comes the post-third phase, post-tertiary phase, quaternary phase. Then what happens in functional and scripture's language, there is complete absence of functional autonomy. The government takes over the institution. The institution exists, but it only exists for the observance of rules and regulations. The functions are largely forgotten, and nobody really cares what the functions were. There are many institutions that you mention. Now, this is a warning for us. It doesn't happen to us, but it could happen. So I think that, how do you prevent this? We look at Western institutions like Pasteur Institute, or the Oxford University and so on, hundreds of years old. Take Pasteur Institute, 19th century onwards. It's not a huge institute, going back to Pasteur. Tremendous heritage. But even today, it has not become very huge. But it is highly productive. It is young, thriving, for example. There are many such institutions. How is it that they do this? We don't have a clear answer for this. But whatever the answer is, it's simply you cannot achieve it by putting in more money, more buildings, more staff. It will not happen. That rejuvenation process is, I've been studying this very closely, including the NIH. It is an infusion of ideas. Every few years, like the vaccine, you have to have a booster. Otherwise, the vaccine, the propensity declines. Similarly, institutions also have a disease that is inbuilt, it will degenerate, it will die eventually. Now this infusion of ideas, that is the secret. Whereas in the Pasteur Institute and all that, it really remains the same. But we are talking about a different subject altogether. That's how we witness the difference.
So, it has seemed to me for a long time that the influence of a loved one's death on those he has left behind ought to be none other than one of greater responsibility. does the one who's passing away not leave 100-fold of everything he had begun to be continued by those who survived them, if they had shared any kind of inner bond at all? I would like to acknowledge the KSTEC, Professor Ashima Valyathan and family of Professor Valyathan, Dr. Usha Kamath, the secretary of Professor Valyathan, Ms. Shripriya ma'am, the medical illustration cell, Mr. Liji Kumar, Mr. Vijay Kumar, and Mr. Saji, for all these precious photographs which they have worked hard to gather for this oration. And I can tell you one small thing, that there is no other person who's a better candidate to carry the legacy of Professor Valyathan oration forwards than Professor Rajesh Gokhale. Thank you so much for coming here.
Thank you, sir. May I now request Dr. Sharika A.R., Principal Scientist, KSCSC, to introduce our speaker for the day.
Good morning, all esteemed guests, distinguished scientists, scholars, and students gathered here today. It's my profound honor to introduce a visionary leader, one of the most influential forces shaping India's biotechnology landscape, Dr. Rajesh S. Gokhale, the Secretary of Department of Biotechnology of Government of India. He is currently on deputation from the Indian Institute of Science, Education and Research, Pune, and prior to this, he served at the National Institute of Immunology and spent about 7.5 years as director of the CSIR Institute of Genomics and Integrative Biology. And during this period, he established the South Campus of CSIR IGIB and led major interdisciplinary programs in translational genomics aimed at unraveling the molecular basis of a wide range of complex diseases. Dr. Gokhale is trained as a chemical biologist, having completed his academic and research training at the Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore, and Stanford University, USA. His scientific contributions are distinguished and deeply impactful. His discovery of previously unknown metabolites of Mycobacterium tuberculosis has opened new windows into TB biology. His pioneering work on vitiligo has eliminated the metabolic and immune pathways underlying autoimmune disease, offering hope for therapies that address root causes rather than symptoms. His research, published in Nature, Molecular Cell, PNAS, and other leading journals, stands at the forefront of modern biomedical innovation. Over 200 students, including 25 PhD scholars, have flourished under his mentorship. As an innovator, he co-founded the Viome Biosciences, taking laboratory discoveries all the way to advanced clinical trials. Dr. Gokhale is not merely a scientist, he's an architect of national transformation. From a former director of the National Institutes, a pioneering researcher who has decoded some of the most complex biological pathways, and today, as the Secretary of the Department of Biotechnology, Government of India, he stands at the helm of India's biotechnology revolution. His contributions have earned him India's highest scientific honors, the Shanti Swarup Bhatnagar Award, the National Bioscience Award, and the Fellowship in the Indian Academy of Sciences, and among many others. But what truly sets him apart is vision. Under his leadership, India has embarked on one of its most ambitious scientific missions, the National Bio-E3 mission, a mission that redefines how biotechnology can power the economy, protect the environment, and create employment. A mission that expands the boundaries of biomanufacturing, deepens innovation pipelines, and positions India as a global contender in sustainable bio-industries. It's rare to witness policy and science converge so powerfully, and Dr. Gokhale stands at that very intersection. For Kerala, his presence today carries special significance. His guidance shaped the very path we now take, strengthening research translation, elevating our bioeconomy, and inspiring the creation of the state bio-E3 cell. His vision is energizing not only laboratories and institutions, but an entire generation of young scientists and entrepreneurs. Ladies and gentlemen, today we have the privilege of listening to a scientist who sees future not as something distant, but as something we must build boldly, sustainably, and together. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Rajesh S. Gokhale, the Secretary of Department of Biotechnology, Government of India, a scientist of rare distinction, a leader of national vision, and an inspiration to all of us, to deliver the prestigious MS Valyathan Memorial Lecture. Over to you, sir.
We now move on to the highlight of today's program, the MS Valyathan Memorial Lecture. It's my honor to invite Professor Rajesh S. Gokhale, Secretary, Department of Biotechnology, Government of India, to deliver the memorial lecture.
Move around now, right? Namaskar and a very good morning to all of you. It's already, I think, first of all, let me thank Professor K.P. Sudhir for inviting me for this really very important lecture. Of course, the KSC ST has been doing fantastic work over the years, and I think it's my real pleasure to come here and talk to all of you about what the excitement of biotech innovation ecosystem is coming around here. Also, thank Dr. Sanjay Bihari for this really fantastic introduction that he gave about Professor M. Valyathan. Clearly, MS Valyathan was a class apart in his own really amazing stuff he has done over the years, actually. And I think my real few additions would be if I can take some of these ideals ahead into bio-innovation ecosystem for the country's future. And that's why I thought I should talk about that the future of next 10 years would be the bio-innovation decade for our country. And during my talk, I'm going to try and see if I can talk about a little bit of what we should do and how one can do this right now. Just to give you a little bit of perspective about it, actually. Also thank Dr. Sarika, Dr. Professor Sabu, and various other KSCSC members, dignitaries here in the audience, directors of vice chancellors and institutions, ladies and gentlemen. I think this is, as I've said already, this is a great opportunity for me to first really talk to you about how to celebrate the timeless legacy of MS Valyathan, actually. I think it's an amazing, when you try to read about him, I've never interacted a lot with him, actually. I had a very small couple of conversations with him, but that left a lasting message on me. But I had known his various endeavors that he wanted to do, actually. And as already talked about by Dr. Sanjay Bihari, he's a multifaceted personality. And the funny part and an amazing part as well is that in everything he did it very, very well, actually, which is not very easy to do in human life. You are good at something, you're not good at everything. To become good at everything, whatever you do, is quite a remarkable facet of a personality it is, actually. And that's why, he was obviously a reputed cardiovascular surgeon, exponent of science of Ayurveda. He had a visionary academician activities, institution builders, prolific author, captivating orator, and a great teacher, actually. And just to get all these qualities, one has to be a superhuman of some kind, I really believe. And I think he was truly like that, actually. So I wanted to, put together what his vision was. If you really try and understand his talks and his writings and other things, I think the key pillars of his vision were indigenous technology development. The Sri Chitra valve, the heart valve that talked about actually. The second one was ethical, affordable and context-driven innovations actually. You need to really contextualize science and technology and innovation in a way that this has its own affordability as well as context perspective. The other aspect was an interdisciplinary scientific ecosystem. Very often in India, the interdisciplinary word is not, not embedded. Even before 10th class or 10th class, you decide whether you are going to take 11th class, whether you're going to take biology or mathematics, right? And it starts from there right now in many places where you start to diversify people into 2 classes, 2 brackets. And then we keep bracketing them and they kind of reach a stage where their interdisciplinary word is almost like a kind of touching the branches rather than really merging of activities with this. And finally, his whole concept was revitalizing Indian ancient medical wisdom through modern science. If you really try and understand what Ayurveda is today actually, is something what generative AI is talking about medical health. Generative AI Ayurveda by inherently is generative in its kind because it kind of senses the systems and not just a person who is an individual actually. And that's how he tries to create new mechanisms of how to do this. And I think that's something that he has kind of thought through. You should really be inbuilt using new technologies and great science and innovations to be able to take it up to the next level. And therefore, I personally believe that charting new horizons with biotech innovations would be a true tribute to his passion if we really take this pledge today, actually, all of us in this audience actually, that for the next decade, we will make bio-innovations as our mission and mandate. That would be a very much appropriate for his legacy to be able to look at actually. So let me start my talk with a little bit of perspective of, what is Viksit Bharat about actually? We keep talking about 2047 Viksit Bharat. And I've taken this from Abhijit Banerjee's article. Some of you may know he was a Nobel laureate in economics actually. And he talks about, what is the model that will befit India's Viksit Bharat. He says, is the US model right? To be rich like US, but society is so suffused with anger, that you cannot tolerate people, you cannot tolerate, successful woman, you have problems in looking at various aspects of this. Is that what India wants actually? The second model is a China model, which is a land of skyscrapers and highways and bullet trains, but also peeping Tom cameras every turn, ensuring compliance to monolithic state actually. Is that what we want to have? And I think what he ends with this is India needs to have courage to be different actually. One of the key aspects of it actually. And that's very important to first to understand that we need to rewrite our own Viksit Bharat story for 2047 and not copy paste from the different sources of looking at actually. So how do we really do it actually? How can we really envisage this is what I'm going to try and explain a little bit from a biotech perspective. Of course, you can't solve the entire country's problems with it. But I think from a point of view of this is very, very important to look at. It starts with this very well accepted and well known perspective of the blind man and the elephant actually. And all of you are aware of this really. But it's very important to really still talk about this. That humans tend to take their partial experiences as a whole truth and the individual's perspective as one and the only vision of reality. You can see, somebody is saying it's a fan, somebody is saying it's a spear, it's a wall. Now, we all know the story, but it has implications that are very, very large actually, if you really look at. One, you don't end up thinking about what is the big picture of everything about actually. You tend to, go and immerse yourself into very small stories and small pictures, which was very, very important and critical for for Professor M.S. Valiyathan actually for the point of view. So what is the big picture? We always miss the relevance. And I think that's what Dr. Sanjay Vihari also talked about institutions right now actually, right? After 25 years or 15 years of institutions, they start to diversify, they start to, dwell around in different regions as Professor Valiyathan was talking about. And then you forget what there was a vision, what was the big picture we started with, how do we really look at it actually. And the second one that is becoming very important in this, in my opinion, is even more important, is how not to get into zero-sum philosophy trap actually. Let me try and make you understand what this zero-sum philosophy comes from actually. And I think this is very important for us to understand because the world is heading into these kind of challenges. All states in India are talking about these kind of things. How do we really come out of this trap? The term zero-sum describes a situation where one person's gain is another person's loss, implying there is a fixed amount of resources and therefore it has to get redistributed. If I get some, then you don't get it. Like for example, if I get a job, then you have not got it because I have got a job, so you lost it. So this is a zero-sum philosophy. Now this actually comes very strongly because of the competitive sports. If you really look at, if one team wins, the other must lose actually, correct? And that gets embedded in human life and we start to think that everything is like that. Everything is about, I getting it and you not getting it, or you got it and I didn't get it actually. But this zero-sum philosophy is a very complex problem actually. And I think this one has to be understood in a much larger way. And that's why, even all the worlds are thinking about zero-sum philosophy actually. So I give you some modern insights into often mistaken as zero-sum thought processes. One of the first one is jobs and immigrations actually. You can see all countries are trying to protect the jobs, trying to protect their immigrants, saying, oh, the immigrants should be thrown away. Or even states in India are talking about their own people and forgetting the real challenge actually. If you really look at the zero-sum views is that the immigrants get job, locals lose them. It's the simplest way of thinking about it, which is what, if somebody gets it, somebody loses it. And therefore, we need to ensure that my state actually grows up actually. The reality is immigrants often creates new demands, pushing services, industries, leading to net job creation actually. So if you really look at holistic perspective, it's actually there is a gain from a point of view. It's not the loss of it is actually. But it is for a simplest of person, it is very easy to narrate that kind of stories actually. The second one is global trade. The zero-sum view is one country has a trade surplus, another country must lose it actually. So, this is what is going on across various international trade practices and all other aspects actually. The reality is trade expands market, lower costs and sparks innovation, and both sides can benefit actually. You don't necessarily look at only one aspect of it. If you keep looking at a very small piece of it, and that is why I said the big picture looking is very, very important to look at. And from a country's point of view, these are very, very important things actually. You cannot get narrow-minded in your own thoughts, process and ideas to really ensure that is. How is the technology and vision, innovation actually? If another country advances AI or biotech, we fall behind. And that's not what it is actually. There's a spillover systems, there are all collaborations, shared platforms, and while you can learn from each other. Similarly, wealth and economic growth actually. If you really look at, you say rich get richer and the poorer get poorer actually. Now, I don't think that is a real perspective of it. Economic growth can increase everybody's capacity to work together. And similarly, the climate action problem actually. People keep talking about, that zero-sum philosophy, cutting emissions is therefore at the expense of economic growth. That's not really true. One can come up with various new mechanisms by which one can really ensure that some of these activities happen. And I want to put this perspective because you have to understand how our country's history has gone through actually. And the historical perspective are very, very important for us to understand this. And therefore, I give you an example that kind of shaped our country's future. This is the classical example of 1943, Bengal famine. And this famine almost, wiped out populations in this part of the country. And what it did, however, it shaped our India's focus actually. It exposed the vulnerability of the food insecurity system and the colonial governance actually. And you can imagine from there what our country did today actually. Find kind of India's focus on food security, self-sufficiency and grain production actually became the paramount importance actually. So how these kind of dramatic things kind of completely impacts the growth potential of it actually. And all of you know, Green Revolution is obviously what it has done to India actually. And you should not undermine. These are science and technology interventions of biological system engineering in the country that has transformed these activities. We very often kind of stop, giving science and technologies due benefit, saying what has it done for the country. But if you really look at, today we are the largest producer exporter of rice, second largest producer of wheat, and every single crop activities are, agri exports are at all-time high of $50 billion actually right now. Now, all of these did not happen on its own. And Professor M.S. Swaminathan, one of the lecturers at KSRTC, obviously was the recently given Bharat Ratna, had very specific scientific and technological intervention. For example, developing high-yielding varieties, expansion of irrigation infrastructure, mechanization of agriculture, chemical fertilizers and pesticides, establishment of agriculture research education, and seed technology and distribution. So all of these activities got set up and reached the state where we are today. We are a food surplus country. We don't have to be depending on anything for any other country to provide us. So can you imagine from 75 years, our country, where there was a famine was biggest one of the problem, we reached the state where we now have a food in surplus that we can provide to other countries, in fact. And that's an amazing SNT intervention actually, amazing science and technological intervention that we should not forget about. However, you look at now what is happening, what is the other part of it actually. India's obesity challenge, this is from Hindustan Times actually, and it talks about by 2050 we will have 70 million people who will be obese in this country actually. And while you can swing from one end of the spectrum to the other end of the spectrum where you see the pictures of poverty and kind of people not having enough food, now there is a glut of food and the food nutritional challenges, problems are coming different actually. So clearly, what one wants to understand as science and technology progresses is, can I have a better blueprint for health and wellness? And that's why the food security and agri food becomes the paramount importance of any good country's civilization and progress. So how do we really do this? And therefore, even though we have built wonderful systems, we need to change the food equation balance, which is a balancing supply, sustainability, nutrition and security actually. So how can we have better food systems that are actually of kinds that are will provide recipes for world that needs to rewrite actually. And what we have done now, which was very important mind you at that time to do it, is by quickly producing as much as food as we can, as cheaply as we can, we are putting an unsustainable strain on the planet. Because if you convert everything into a commodity, the cost of the commodity becomes that you start wasting things. And the wastage then leaks back into the feedback into the system and converts into saying that how do we really work around this actually. And you can imagine, despite this position in India, 800 million people still don't have enough food to eat and 2 billion can't afford healthy food actually in the world. So as India looks upon to become a leader of the world, one needs to address and define solutions for what is a healthy food equation for our country's progresses actually. And how do we really do this? How do we really come up with this can really be talked about and discussed around. But clearly there are amazing opportunities, and I will show you a little bit of an examples of how circular economy models of food grain around can in fact be transformative for the entire country actually. Another watershed event in our country that happened on our entire world actually is the COVID-19 actually. These watershed events are an amazing way to transform the whole country and the economy and the sustainability and the innovation ecosystem. One example I gave this, the second example that many of you would know about of the milk revolution actually, right? White revolution or, Operation Flood, what was talked about actually. Again, an example of how social engineering and improving cattle feed and improving the lifestyle can completely transform. So these are biological revolutions that have happened in our country and have provided humankind the best possible scenario what is possible today. But there are challenges. There are challenges that constantly comes in SNT ecosystem in the world. So this is another one, COVID-19. Now what did it talk about? People were looking for vaccines. Everybody was saying we have to vaccinate our country first and then only we can export to any other country. So it talks about the fragility and interdependence of globalized technology and advanced society. What was government India did actually? It came up with a Mission COVID Suraksha program, which was handled by Department of Biotechnology with BIRAC. And I believe this is one of the most successful PPP program in the government of India, which gave about 600 about 800 crores to all the private institutions, and they develop the technologies that I have listed out here actually. For example, maybe it's a DNA vaccine technology, maybe a replication deficient chimpanzee adenovirus intranasal vaccine, or the covaxin upgradation activities augmentation, or the RNA vaccine or the protein subunit vaccine. Now, every single platform, not only R&D is available in the country, but the manufacturing capacity is available. We can produce doses of that are unprecedented quantity and quality that has never before happened actually in our country. So you can imagine now for vaccine biomanufacturing, entire world has to look at to the India for you to come and say, can we actually collaborate with you? Can you work with us? Can you provide us this opportunity? So, excuse me. So these watershed events does provide countries an opportunity to really take up to its task. And what India has done really well in all those opportunities whenever they have got and whenever they have these come, is that all during the war time we become one united country, one united state, everything and completely change the dimensions. You can imagine this example as it is. So the challenge really in front of us, all of us, and again I'm trying to give you some challenges that all of you can think about. How do we engineer the future of healthcare now? Given that we have this scenario, given that, because you are looking at a completely new level of quality of activities, and there is going to be shift of medicine from the classical chemistry-based molecules to the biology-driven healthcare actually. And this is going to be completely transformative, the whole healthcare ecosystem actually. Now, can we prepare ourselves for this? Can we define the goals? Can we define what Viksit Bharat would look like actually? And the reason why I'm saying this is, let me give you this by an example actually. What happens today, medicine today. For example, you take a 46-year-old male, and for Sri Chitra people, it's at institute to talk about this is a little bit of an overstatement, but sometimes you have to say this. So type 2 diabetes and NFLD, and the person is having dyslipidemia. Now, despite the pharmacotherapy, you can't predict whether the early sarcopenia markers will set in this person or not actually, or whether the metabolic and cardiac conditions are likely to happen in this person, because you just hope that you are treating the symptoms actually. Of course, what you can do very well is you can measure a visceral fat on DEXA. You can look at these parameters, or you can look at the flattened cortisol rhythms actually, where you will say that the person is under chronic stress and therefore his cortisol is not kind of, going up and down, and therefore they are important to look at. So today's medicine is you diagnosis, you reveal symptoms, and you drug for each condition is given actually. And that's how we treat medicine today, as of today. However, we're not treating the causes for the chronic diseases. Even for infectious diseases, some of which we have been able to do, we cannot be able to do it. How do we really do it? And that's where the biology-driven healthcare, which will be shifting focus from symptoms to the systems, will happen actually. You have to shift the focus from the symptoms to a system perspective of how would that happen actually. For example, you will have a multi-omics AI twin models, large amount of continuous data collections. For example, already several of you may be wearing these watches which is collecting data from all sorts of places. And a variety of data will continue to come, and you will have to start to make digital twin models of these actually. You can have then pathway level dynamic simulations, and you can have basically large number of knowledge graphs and response simulations, and can start predicting pathways. And of course, this will take about a couple of decades to happen, but you need to start them today actually. And eventually, your personalized health plan will be on your phone actually. You will be able to look at your cardiovascular functions. Now, this is not a substitute for clinician, mind you. Please do not mistake this actually, that you will substitute the clinical people. But this will provide tremendous amount of knowledge to the clinical people for the continuous monitoring of the data available to be able to do this. And already cell phones gives you all your, what is your heart rhythm activities going on, what is your pulse rate. If you have iWatch, you can see already things are starting to emerge. Can we design this as a country? Can we make it this happen actually? Now, how will this happen? Now, at the back end, you will require a digital twin models actually, and the digital twin models will at the back end of because all the scientists are over here actually, you can understand the details. And at the end of the day, you can say that you may be able to, from the data, may be able to predict that this is an HPA axis disruption has happened actually. So hypothalamus, pituitary, adrenal gland axis is disrupted. There is a high cancer in metabolites and the chronic stress physiology is in the patient. So you need to reset it. Now, how do you reset this actually, right? I don't know, no doctor knows how to reset the HPA axis actually. The other part is that the oxidative burden is there. There is a pyroglutamate and cysteine elevations, impaired glutathione recycling going on, or the mitochondrial dysfunction is there, or the gut immune axis is perspective, or the muscle breakdown is very high because there are lots of elevated BCA, intermediate ketone overflow, early sarcopenia risk. So many of these can be then analyzed at the same time. And this is what I'm saying, from a symptom to a system perspective. You will start looking at the systemic perspective, and I can almost guarantee that in 10 years to come, there'll be a digital twin for every individual available in the many countries. I mean, I can assure you that Finland and other countries are already trying to put together that for every individual, there will be a computer model that will be running separately, parallelly as an individual, which will tell you details of what is going on right now. However, Indian medicine and other traditional practices can provide some alternatives for this actually. So for example, tomorrow's prescription will not only give medicines, but will also have, for example, L-theanine and pranayam to downshift your chronic HPA axis, some kind of additives, and these kind of new prescriptions will be available actually. So there are tremendous amount of opportunity for us to redefine our own medicine. How do we really build this? How can we really take this analysis of genomics, analysis of all the data that is there and create into this kind of perspective? So therefore, I think, as I always try to understand this, you need to go back and understand how historically things have changed actually. And therefore, next slide of mine tells you how technological revolutions, when they come, they change everything. Because many of you will still be not convinced by my thought process and ideas, because you will say, oh, how can this happen? This is never going to happen actually. But therefore, this slide talks about how 200 years of technological revolution has completely changed the world. Completely changed the world. The first part of it, if you can imagine, which was around 1750s and all, when the cotton used to be, the cloth used to be done by the hand, then spinning wheelies started, and the, industrial revolution started around that time. And then the age of steam engine came, then came the engine of heavy engineering, then the oil and automobile production, age of ICT, and now I can almost guarantee you that next 25 years will be biomanufacturing actually. And what has happened to this world, if you really try and understand? The first part of technological revolution mechanized the world. It completely mechanized every activity of human activity so that we are able to do this. The second part electrified the world. It kind of then provided a completely new dimension to it. For example, and I'll show you a video in my next slide to be able to see how world changes. It's unimaginative. You cannot imagine how world changes. And the third part was digitalization. For example, I remember when I was a child, I used to stand in queues in railway station to book my ticket. Now, and I used to always think, why does it take so long time to book a ticket? I can't figure this out right now. And I never thought that, even before, as you said, can you see evolution in front of your own eyes? Nobody goes for ticket, forget railway ticket. Even cinema ticket now you don't go and book there. You just book on your phones and do it. So everything changes. When technological revolution comes, everything changes. Nothing remains same. And all of these changes, the mechanization, electrification, digitalization, now the next transformation is going to be biolization of the world. It will biologize the world. You can imagine, can you remember how much memory you have in your brain? It's an endless memory, right? You say, in the supercomputer, terabyte or whatever it is kind of. You cannot imagine the efficiency, the metabolism perspective, how world will become a very, very different place to look at actually. And that's why the biolization of the world, can we be part of this revolution? Because in many of these industrial and technological revolutions, we were actually following the revolution processes. In biotech ecosystem presently, we may be maximally 4 to 5 years behind the entire world. And I've already showed you for vaccine manufacturing, we are the number world. We produce 70% of the world's vaccine actually for the world today. So just try and understand this. I thought I'll play this video for you for some of you who are not convinced how the world changes. This video will give you a little bit of perspective about it.
What is that?
That's a washing machine. Well, where does it wash? shall we know what to do?
So you can see 1935 movie clip was like this, right? People does not think washing machine and refrigerators are any important. They don't know, what is going for a swim or going for a movie is about actually. And can you imagine how life has changed today? None of us can imagine life without washing machine and refrigerator today actually. And this is not very long. Just imagine on an evolutionary time scale, it is hardly anything. Human evolution has happened 3,500 years ago or something like that. The technological revolutions within 100 years have made it mandatory that every home should have an electricity. We cannot live without electricity. We cannot live without this mechanized world. And that's where I'm talking about that the biolization of the world will happen and will happen at an unprecedented speed that we cannot imagine. And the reason for this, again, I'll give you this reason for it actually. Till today, it was only the natural intelligence which was cognitive and adaptive capabilities of human allowed us to do all this. Whatever we can think of, how we can be able to do it. But there are two other circles that have joined now in biological revolution. One is the biological intelligence, which is the DNA encoded structured intelligence that is actually used for centuries and have developed from variety of processes. And the third one is a generative intelligence, which is an artificial intelligence which amplifies human understanding. Now, can you imagine these triple triad of intelligence of natural, biological and artificial? What is going to change the world? And what speed will it do it actually? It's absolutely unimaginative. In 10 years, believe me, everything will change. Everything will change, and I mean it. Your food, water, air, every industry would look at different way. And therefore, I'm saying this, that the biomanufacturing, healthcare, agriculture, and environmental resilience has to be dictated by our country's Viksit Bharat roadmap, which all of us have to build. If we don't build it, then somebody else will put it on us and tell us this is how it should be done. And that's what is our Honorable Prime Minister continuously talks about actually. And that's what we need to really understand this, that how do we build, who is going to build it otherwise? My whole question is who's going to build the Viksit Bharat roadmap? If we don't build it, if the scientific and technocrats and people sitting over here, industry people and others, we have to make our own models. We have to decide our own lives. We have to create our own vision for the country. And the country will decide and dictate and be the guru for the future of the world actually. And I can almost guarantee that's almost certain about it. So what is Department of Biotechnology doing? And just to give you a little bit of historical perspective, it's not me only who's doing it. There are several people, reverend people who have done fantastic stuff before this. It's a very youngish department. Started in '86 and we focused on capacity building and cutting edge research and innovation. And about 2014, Dr. Bhan set up BIRAC, which now transited to entrepreneurship program and activities actually. Only one of the ministries that decided to set up a Section 8 company that supported this, the BIRAC event. And since 2014, now we are trying to focus on bioeconomy of the country actually. Because we now have all this together, we can now talk about, can we take leadership in the bioeconomic perspective of the country's future actually. And what is department's role now is to transform biology into an industrial force. We cannot remain lab-only biological work. Can we engineer the future of healthcare? As I told you right now, can we promote sustainable manufacturing and foster circular bioeconomy, as I will talk to you in future of my slides. Embedding all these together will make our Viksit Bharat a real world actually. And right now, how will it impact actually? So the government of India, under the Honorable Prime Minister's leadership, Union Cabinet, in fact, approved this policy called BioE3 policy, called Biotechnology for Economy, Environment and Employment about a year back now. And our Honorable Minister, Dr. Jitendra Singh, launched it on 31st actually. The whole idea really is that can we have sustainable, innovative and responsible to global challenges, and can we harness the power of biotechnology to be able to do this right now? Let me just take a small clip from Honorable Prime Minister's recent talk that he talked about biotechnology prospects and BioE3 policy, share with you, just to tell you that what is our country's topmost leaders thinking about this right now actually.
Bio अहम हिस्सा है। बायो इकोनॉमी का लक्ष्य होता है नेचुरल रिसोर्सेज का सही इस्तेमाल, बायो बेस्ड प्रोडक्ट्स और सर्विसेज का प्रमोशन और इस सेक्टर में रोजगार के नए मौके बनाना। बायो इकोनॉमी सस्टेनेबल डेवलपमेंट को गति देती है, इनोवेशन को अवसर देती है। मुझे खुशी है कि बीते 10 वर्षों में देश की बायो इकोनॉमी तेजी से आगे बढ़ी। साल 2014 में जो बायो इकोनॉमी $10 बिलियन की थी, वो आज $150 बिलियन से ज्यादा की हो गई है। भारत अपनी बायो इकोनॉमी को नई बुलंदी देने में भी जुटा है। कुछ समय पहले ही भारत ने बायो E3 पॉलिसी की शुरुआत की है। इस पॉलिसी का विजन ये है कि भारत आईटी रिवॉल्यूशन की तरफ ग्लोबल बायोटेक लैंडस्केप में भी एक लीडर बनकर उभरे। इसमें आप सभी वैज्ञानिकों की बड़ी भूमिका है और इसके लिए मैं आपको अपनी शुभकामनाएं देता हूं।
So you can see the clip that I'm playing from one of the recent speech that Honorable Prime Minister talked about, and he talks about how this will be the defining feature of the entire country's future. So what department has done is in fact identified 6 key sectors for biomanufacturing related activities. And one of the key sectors is bio-based enzymes and chemicals. And I will give you one example of this to illustrate this whole thought process. The second one is functional food and smart proteins. The third one is precision biotherapeutics. As you can imagine, the biologics and cell-based therapies actually are going to be transformative, what we call living medicine. Climate resilient agriculture, which is again the most important feature. The carbon capture and utilization, because that's very critical and component as the growth happens, one needs to capture the carbon. And finally, the marine and space research actually. To be able to do this, what we are trying to do is to set up biomanufacturing hubs and biofoundries all across the country, and bio-AI hubs that will actually completely allow us to change the dimensions of these actually right now. So all these sectors, as I talked about, there are 5 sectors that I talk about actually: agri-food, energy and chemicals, climate change and health. And these are where disruptive innovations will completely reimagine us what the future is about actually. Let me give you an example of this right now. And the first one is an energy example. If you take energy today, energy for India is largely imported actually, right? I mean, all the oil that we import from the countries right now actually. So 86% of the oil is imported, and you can imagine this is the refinery that is present over here. It's the refinery that produces 43% petrol, 28% diesel, jet fuel and other polymers right now. How do we really change this? How do we diminish this import of oil subsidies actually, oil activities? And one of the key aspects is one can imagine that oil is nothing but carbon atom. And carbon atom can be repurposed from plastic waste, biomass and carbon dioxide. If we start capturing these, converting into oil technologies and then start producing diesel and jet fuel, polymer and chemicals, you can imagine we can be completely independent of the import substitute actually. Now you can see on the right hand side I've removed the petrol completely from this, whereas 43% of the petrol for it is being made. Primarily because the other technologies like battery as well as the green hydrogen will in fact now become the small mobility perspective to look at. So this one, and it's also, you can read this Nature article, in fact talks about it, that how every country is trying to move away from the fossil fuel to the recyclable fuel. Of course, plastic is fossil fuel actually, but because you cannot get rid of the plastic, you can keep on saying, plastic is a nuisance, but plastic is one of the most critical component of all material science, what we talk about actually. So why can't we reutilize the plastic waste into oil, which can then provide us 25% of oil production is what we are talking about right now. The second example is the chemical life right now. I mean, our chemical industry is one of the largest industry in the world. About 60,000 to 70,000 molecules are produced by chemical industry. 60,000 to 70,000 molecules. You know, you can imagine the industry with our agri-poultry industry, dyes and pigment, food and feed additives, pharma, construction chemicals, water treatment chemicals, home care ingredients, polymers, perfumes, flavors, fertilizers, anything you talk about is chemical industry is there. Now, all this chemical industry, precursors of it comes from the petrochemical industry. These are the precursors that come from the petrochemical industry, and therefore these are called petrochemicals actually, right? Classically, if you really look at, they are called petro. Now, if you are going to change the petroleum, petro products, what will happen to this industry? This industry will completely collapse. The cost of materials will become very, very large actually. So how do we really build this? So therefore, we need to develop agri-crop, agri-waste and landfill and municipal waste on industry pollutants to start producing these intermediates. And this can be done using precision fermentation technologies, using microbial resources and plant and microbial resources to be able to produce all these activities, whereas this can feed into the system. So how to diversify is what one needs to understand as a country perspective actually. The third example that I would like to give is for milk, eggs and dairy and other stuff actually. Now just imagine, we are the 25% of the world producer of the milk today. 25% of the world, mind you. We're an amazing country actually. 25% of the milk of the world comes from our country. However, our milk production for the human population of the size 1376 million, the per capita availability is only 455 gram per day. So what that means is that you get less than 500 ml per person if every individual has to have a milk. That means every individual is not getting milk. And then if the population reaches to 1.6 billion, what will happen? Obviously the price of milk will increase because there'll be a supply chain problem actually. But to be able to do this, how do we India produces it? The cattle count, if you really look at, we've got about 300 millions of bovine actually in the country, 300 million bovines, 75 million sheep, 149 million goats, 9 million pigs and 850 million poultry. Now if you can imagine, if I want to increase the livestock, the first question is how do I increase the livestock? It's already 300 million is so large a number. And then who will do the livestock farming? Because all of you, the real problem is nobody wants to do farming any longer. All the farmers want to do all the technology-driven jobs. Similarly, the livestock farming. So how will we energize these sectors? And these solutions and technologies have to be found today. They cannot be found later. The other problem is there is the scarcity of land, water, antibiotic resistance, cattle, cost of feed and green hydrogen impact actually. So clearly you can see there are companies like Perfect Day have started to put non-dairy milk in our country actually. They produce this non-dairy milk and you can now start producing milk through this actually. And I can almost guarantee that by the time next couple of decades actually, everything will start producing in your homes actually. You can produce many of these activities in your home itself. The final example I give for castor oil actually. Now again, this is a very, very important area to look at. Castor oil is one of the biggest exports that we do from our country right now. It's produced by farmers and all of them get very good export price. So nobody asks you for minimum sale price right now. Nobody is asking for MSP, which all the farmers keeps asking for their own, because they're getting an export price. But what we are doing, this castor oil we are importing and exporting, and we are importing the rubber, industrial rubber from it actually. Now what China has already done is that it has started to produce castor oil in a fermentation based microbial methods. Because these are molecules, they can be produced, they can be encoded by DNA. So in 5 years, China will become the largest producer of importer of castor oil. So what will happen? Our farmers will ask saying that, oh, we are not getting export market. Please give us minimum selling price. Now the challenge is, they are right in their own ways. But the scientific community has to provide them technological solution early enough such that they can sustain their own livelihood actually. So it's always a kind of vicious chain that happens actually, and therefore you can see, like for example Gujarat, which is about produces 14.75 lakh tons of castor oil, castor seed production. What will these farmers do actually? And I think that is where technological revolution has to happen And we need to understand that India has to produce our own science and technological prowess to be able to ensure to make this actually right now. And how do we really do this? And that's what I keep saying, that DBT is not just a funding agency, but it nurtures the pillars of foundational element through collective intelligence actually. It does science, policy, infrastructure, sustainability, coordination, skills, financial models and partnership. And I'm sure same thing is applicable for KSC, ST here as well actually, who are coordinating large number of activities. And these foundational elements, all of them have to be nurtured to be able to make up what our mission program is about actually. Now, for the BioE3 policy, and I'll skip few slides because I think it's getting a little bit late for me to give. There are 3 strategies that we have decided. One is the strategic, which is global biomanufacturing hub, so that you provide capex. You provide capex for people and entrepreneurs to be able to utilize, and they only bring the OPEX money. Create effective center-state collaborations, because every state has a unique problem, unique ways of looking at it. And there are programmatic solutions where we are now providing about more than 2,000 applications we have received this year for under the biomanufacturing call, and new infrastructure and investment to emerge from biomanufacturing companies as an enabler actually. And therefore, this is one of our important perspective to create BioE3 cells. Now, every state has a regionally tailored approach is required actually. For example, there are spices here, there are a large number of manufacturing needs to be done. There is a water-rich body here. There are a lot of marine systems can look at. So how do we really set out these goals? And our plan is to set up BioE3 cells across several states such that this becomes a knowledge hub. And then every couple of weeks, they meet and get together and talk about best practices, talk about the technology available, and try to find solutions of the kinds. For example, I can give you how to model a tier 2, tier 3 cities around sugarcane industry actually. Now this has happened in our country over last 25 to 30 years of time. Now sugarcane, which is actually about produced in 4.85 million hectares in the country, one of the biggest crop in the country actually. Now you can see what sugarcane does. It produces sugar syrup, which produces edible sugar. You can produce ethanol from it. You can take molasses and convert into the biomethanation. You can produce 2G ethanol. You can take lignin derivatives to produce various kind of chemicals and starting materials. You can take collagen to produce various other activities. And so like this, you can create for every agrochemical, agro event, you can create a circular economy such that the clusters evolves into integrate farmers, mills, energy utilities and biotech firms actually. And these together therefore can provide food, fuel and fertilizer, which becomes a very, very important perspective of how state tier 2, tier 3 cities should grow up actually. And we can devise this for rice crop, we can devise this for maize crop, we can devise this for wheat crop, because finally it's the rice, because the plants consist of 3 components: sugars, cellulases, hemicellulases and lignins. And all of these components are in fact carbon matter, which can be recycled and converted into large number of utility products actually. And we being an agrarian country, have many states get 3 crops as well actually. So why can't we make use of these biomass? Why can't we channelize the resources? Why can't the imports that we get for various materials can be subsidized to this purpose actually? At the same time, what we are trying to do is trying to set up, for example, reviving large cardamom. This is a problem that first BioE3 cell we set up in Sikkim, state of Sikkim in northeast actually. And they came up with a problem saying that large cardamom, which was one of the biggest import or export of India, has now declined. And now plant survives from 30 years to 5 to 6 years only. And you can see this is what happens to the state of the plants now. And Nepal has now become the largest producer of cardamom, large cardamom in the world actually. So why is this happening? Of course, many of you know that Sikkim is a chemical-free state as well actually. It decided to go chemical-free actually. It does not use pesticides and fertilizers. So therefore, you need to come up with a real strategic plan. And very soon you realize that the most of the plants are produced through vegetative propagation actually. So they take the crop and put the same plant there. Now all of you know that if you not do sexual differentiation process and meiosis and other activities, will continue to, the crops will not grow. So clearly, a tissue culture bank and a crop production seed and providing some kind of immediate solution to antivirals and others can really solve this problem. So you can solve these problems for the states by putting pieces together. Similarly, you can see this example of Numaligarh factory actually. This is a 2G ethanol plant that Honorable Prime Minister just recently inaugurated actually. This produces 2G ethanol from bamboo. 300,000 ton of bamboo it uses for per year actually. You can imagine 60,000 kiloliter of ethanol will be produced and 11,000 liter of acetic acid and 144 gigawatt of energy will be produced around this. Now the challenge is that how to pre-treat the bamboo biomass. The enzyme required is around 11,500 tons of enzyme is required annually. And none of our fermentation facilities can produce these kind of enzyme mass right now. Now this enzyme is only produced by one company called Novanesys from Denmark actually. Now you can imagine the whole factory is now under the supply chain issue. If tomorrow Denmark stops to import this enzyme to you, your complete factory will completely get disseminated. But there are technologies available. For example, ICGV has a technology that can produce cellulases and biomass and convert it. So what we are trying to do is we are connecting these dots. We are bringing people together. We are setting up these bio-E3 cells so that technology feeders can provide information from these activities. And many of these activities, therefore, will be completely transformative actually. At the same time, as I said, we are producing bio-enablers of various technologies, healthcare, agri-food, energy and green material actually. Also, we are trying to look at the space domain area. I never thought when I started the bio-E3 policy, I never thought the space experiments will be able to do so soon. But Subhanshu Shukla, as you would realize, did 3 experiments from DBT labs in the space actually. One was got to look at therapeutic targeting pathways driving skeletal muscle dysfunction. The second one was microgravity of edible algae, and the third was cyanobacteria. So you can imagine, in 10 years to come, with the Indian-owned space station, you can think of doing experiments in a microgravity space as well actually. So just imagine what can happen and how things can change. And therefore, right now, our vision is what is limiting what we can do actually right now. And I think therefore what we are trying to do is, we are saying that the era of working in silos is over actually. And as Dr. Sanjay Bihari was talking to me in the morning actually, that Trivandrum has formed its cluster, bio-cluster or cluster of institutions actually, which is what is very important to look at. What we have done is we have put together the Biotechnology Research Innovation Council across all the DBT institutions. And together, our plan is to really build research synergies, strengthen and align scientific innovation ecosystem, do global positioning. Because unless we do global positioning, you can never have a large S&T impact actually. And then asset monetization and monetization, how to be able to look at it actually. So if you really now combine all of them together, BRIC, you can see BRIC becomes the largest number 1 ranked in biological sciences in India as per the Nature Springer Index impact actually. So we now has a strength of people. You have 3,000 publications come, 107 patents, 2,000 students, 678 postdocs and other 4,000 research personnel. So you have a human resource of about 5,000 people. Now this 5,000 people becomes an enormously impactful trained people to be able to energize and make sure that they work in a synergy to be able to look at it actually. So how do we do human resource management actually? And I think one of the challenges that I personally believe has happened in the Indian ecosystem is, for example, there are 4 facets of learning actually through Vedas actually. It's called Shastra, Tantra, Vidya and Kala. And all our studies, through Shastra we learn specialized knowledge, Tantra we learn doctrine and principles through your PhD program or supervisor. Vidya is the deep knowledge and reasoning. However, what we miss is the Kala, Vidya to Kala transition, because we have no skill and effective performance actually understanding. You finish a PhD program and you say, what do I do next? No, I thought the PhD was the end of your studies actually, and there was nothing beyond this you can do. So clearly what is happening now is, in the entire world, people are starting to talk about this. This is a Nature editorial that I took away. How can we do away with only academic credentials? The academic credentials are important, but they are not sufficient. They are not sufficient to give a job. They are not sufficient to create new value chain that is clearly important. And that's why, talking about PhD training is no longer fit for the purpose. It needs reforms now actually. And, clearly the challenge is that the individual dissertation-based programs are not sufficient to gain anybody's knowledge actually. Neither it's important for society, nor it's important for cross-disciplinary working teams that are the critical and important to look at. So what we have done through BREAK, by combining BREAK, we've kind of have put together this program called I3C, kind of ideate, innovate, immerse and collaborate. So all students from all the institutions work at one place for 6 months. And we built a network of these activities. And then what we have done is we've kind of identified problems all across the country and put them to a problem-solving approach from the PhD right from the beginning one. So we two of these PhD students in a common program such that there is a co-working culture and an experiential learning can happen actually. And I believe this is going to be transformative for how PhD students will come out with much bigger mandate and much better understanding of how this is actually. And finally, I just talked to you about one small piece of what Honorable Prime Minister said from the Red Fort this year about Bio-E3 policy actually. So you can imagine what Honorable Prime Minister is suggesting is that younger people should join together this whole momentum that in the country is about, driving about it. Now to be able to do this, what Department of Biotechnology has done is has identified a design challenge called Design for Bio-E3. And the whole purpose of this is to empower youth to solve critical issues of their times actually. And this challenge is now already open. This challenge round is going to continue. So you come up with an idea. Just stop thinking about brackets. Aisa hona chahiye. Why can't this can happen? Why this should work like this? How should we do this actually right now? And in fact, this challenge is now already open now. It's going to be started on 1st of November. And every month, announcements for the top 10 categories of students will get 1 lakh rupees as the prize. Every month for the next 12 months. So you about 120 ideas will get completely 1 lakh rupees prizes, and then an opportunity to take this to a design strategy by working in biotech labs or the bio incubators, about 100 of bio incubators that are present across the country. So participate in these activities for you yourself so that you solve the problem of the country. You give solutions to the country's future. And these are only ideas. We're not talking about what you want, and the IP and everything will belong to you, whosoever gives the ideas. We are not keeping the IPs of these activities actually. But this is what government wants. Government wants citizen participation in finding solutions for country's progress. And I think this is an opportunity for all of you to participate actually. Finally, I just leave you with one parable, which is one of my very favorite, but it talks about something really esoteric and something really profound from my favorite Dr. Dyer actually, who's been writing this amazing stuff actually. And this is a communication between the two twins which are in the mother's womb. And I will just read it because I don't want to spoil this whole thing, but I'll just read it. Just imagine what it is. In a mother's womb were two babies. One asked the other, "Do you believe in life after delivery?" The other replied, "Why? Of course, there has to be something after delivery. Maybe we are here to prepare ourselves for what we will be later." "Nonsense," said the first. "There is no life after delivery. What kind of life would that be?" The second said, "I don't know, but there will be more light than here. Maybe we'll walk with our legs, eat from our mouths. Maybe we will have other senses that we can't understand now." The first replied, "That is absurd. Walking is impossible, and eating with our mouths, ridiculous. The umbilical cord supplies nutrition and everything we need. But the umbilical cord is in short life after delivery, is logically excluded." You can imagine how two individuals actually who are in a place where we all know what happens after delivery is what they're talking about actually. The second insisted, "Well, I think there is something and it may be different than it is here. Maybe we won't need this physical cord anymore." The first replied, "Nonsense. And moreover, if there is there is life, then why has no one ever come back from here? Delivery is the end of life, and in the delivery there is nothing but darkness, silence and oblivion. It takes us nowhere. Well, I don't know, said the second, but certainly we will meet mother and we will take care of us. The first replied, mother? You actually believe in mother? That's laughable. If mother exists, then where is she now? The second said, she's all around us. We are surrounded by her. We are of her. It is her that we live. Without her, this world would not exist and could not exist. Said the first, well, I don't see her, so it is only logical that it doesn't exist. To which the second replied, sometimes when you are in silence and you are focused and you really listen, you can perceive the presence and you can hear her loving voice calling down from above. You can just imagine how two dramatically thought processes are actually. All of us know what happens, and therefore I always think that practice to perceive unseen prospects are not easy in human life. You always live in your cocoon. You always think this is what it is, this is what my world is. I cannot change the world, I cannot be dramatically different. I am because this is what is given to me, this is what is around us. But I can tell you, these are the episodes that tells you that how amazing capabilities and powers that you have to transform our country's future actually. And I think it is you, and you are the one who are going to decide this country's what Viksit Bharat is of 2047. And I think I will end here by thanking all of you and for your patient listening. And thank you for the invitation.
We now have a short interaction and Q&A session. The floor is now open for questions. May I request participants to keep their questions concise. Our volunteers are here to assist you with the mic. So anybody with a question, please raise your hand.
Thank you for that wonderful talk. And I think the note that you ended it on was really very poignant and very thought-provoking. I'll ask you a very over-the-top, obvious kind of question, which clearly, a lot of people must be thinking about, but maybe you can give us some insights. So this entire concept of biomanufacturing and using natural systems, taking advantage of enzymes and cellular mechanisms to really make efficient ex vivo systems, is an excellent idea. But cost, how do we make these economically viable? Because developing these kind of systems, often to scale, is a very economically intense process, and outputs from them would therefore not be viable in the economic cycle.
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's a very important one as well. Because at the end of the day, you need to find finances for the technology perspective actually. Now, how do we strategize this? And the strategies are, one, there are so many components and chemicals that are imported actually, right? That leads to import subsidies actually. So we can therefore provide, the government is willing to provide subsidy for technologies. For example, 2G ethanol is an example now you look at. The cost of 2G ethanol as of today is about 100 to 120 per litre, whereas government is selling it at 60 rupees a litre. It's taking these costs. Why is it taking the cost? Because it needs to reach the technological scales of economies of scale. Similarly, every single program, government will support these activities. But we need to strategize all these stuff. And I think that's where we need to understand what is an import item, how many, for example, we are going to release a website of about 500 products that are imported beyond billions of dollars actually in the country. Now, many of these can be produced actually, because anything that can be coded by DNA can be produced commercially now. I'm sure all of you who practice biology will understand this, because there was a time when the engineering by DNA used to be really tricky. Now, everybody in every lab can engineer DNA, and that is piece and paste that is unprecedented actually. So anything that can be coded by DNA can be commercially made viable in about 2 years' time. And I personally believe that how do we strategize is a very critical and important perspective. You know, for example, vaccine program you look at, right? I mean, of course, it was COVID time. Everybody wanted to have manufacturing capacity done. But 800 crores is nothing for our country. If you really look at, if the country has to put in 800 crores in few pieces and few times, it's trivial. So I think this will happen. It will require a little bit of strategy, as you rightly said. And I think my best guess is we start from an import substitute as well as new innovative products that will change the medical health perspective. It will make a lot of difference.